Hey guys, what's up? It's Chase Jarvis, founder and CEO of Creative Live. You all know that we have more than 2,000 classes and more than 10,000 hours of learning, inspirational, and motivational content on the platform. I'm super excited to announce a new experience on Creative Live. It's called Fast Class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top Creative Live classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on Creative Live? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours. If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline? It's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into Creative Live TV today. Hey, what's up? How everybody's doing? I'm Chase Jarvis, your good friend here. I am coming at you live from my cabin a couple hours north of Seattle. Very, very happy to be in your ears today. I'm super excited for our guest here. Hey, Adam, just so you know, I'm getting an echo in my headphones, but very, very excited to announce a very special guest here shortly. Before we do, I would love to know where you're tuning in from around the world. I know we're Facebook Live to Facebook page to YouTube, and of course at creativelive.com/TV. If you want to comment or ask some questions of the guest, I'd recommend you go to creativelive.com/TV. You can click live chat in the upper right hand corner and ask some questions. I'm seeing all those things in real time and can ask a question of the guest. So we're looking forward to your participation. And in the meantime, let us know where you're coming in from. I'd love to give a shout out to you in your country or city, wherever you're representing today. But without further ado, I'd like to get into today's guest. Very, very excited, and it's been fun. This was supposed to be an in-person conversation, and this artist was supposed to be on tour right about this time. But as we know, the world has changed. But I will tell you a little bit about him. He is a renowned artist and musician. He's played all over the world. His single, Let the Drummer Kick, went platinum with virtually no support for commercial radio. The Washington Post called him DC's finest export since Marvin Gaye, which if you're in the same company as Marvin Gaye, that is something to be said. And Rolling Stone has raved that his uncommon chords and harmonies combine delicate dissonance with the unexpected flashes of beauty. Individual albums from this artist have sold more than 700,000 copies. His latest album dropped in March of 19, Heroin and Helicopters, which I just played this morning, sitting up here at our little family cabin and drank an entire pot of coffee. So I'm ready to go. We've got a new single that just dropped today from this particular artist. His name is Clarence Greenwood, but he goes by the name of Citizen Cope, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome him to our virtual stage. Cope, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me today.
It's an amazing opportunity to have you on the show. Very, very, very happy. And congratulations on the new single, Scared of Heights, just dropping today. Super, super excited. I watched that announcement from you on Instagram. What's it been like to drop a new single in this crazy time?
Well, I wrote the song a while ago and recorded it, I guess last year sometime, and I just felt I've been kind of waiting to kind of get maybe some license or placement or some kind of campaign behind the song because I feel really strong about it. And when this came, it just seemed like such an important song for the times right now. Scared of Heights deals with kind of overcoming fear, and I was kind of at a place or at a block where I wanted to express how fear kind of motivates a lot of us, and there's a point that it stops working. So I think that in the song kind of addresses that and kind of facing your fears and overcoming your fears during adversity, and I felt like that was kind of timely right now.
Perfectly timed. Couldn't have been better. And it brought me a lot of joy this morning. Again, I mentioned, and I'm up here secluded in a little family cabin. No better place for me to take it in. Let's talk about the writing of the new single that just dropped today. What's your process for something like that? Was that short, and did it all come to you at one sitting, or is this something that has evolved over the last several months and weeks?
Well, I wrote it in one particular fashion, and I was on the road, and Chris Bars, who works with me, had brought this guitar ukulele, which is a small little instrument. It's like this. It's like a ukulele, but it's a guitar. It's got 6 strings. And I'd written the song, kind of put down a rough draft of it, and I started playing with that, and that seemed to really work better. And I went back and recorded it just with the guitar and vocals, and it pretty much writing the song was pretty fast, and then recording it. It was just one of those songs that happened. I felt really good about it. It can happen a million different ways. You can sit there and struggle over a mix or struggle about a performance, but a great record, like recording of a song, usually requires there to be a great performance, a great sound, whatever that sound is, even if it's lo-fi. It has to sound like it's sitting somewhere. It has a home. Mm-hmm. And then also you got your production as well, and the song is really important. But if it's not as easy to make a great recording as we think. Otherwise we would, everyone could record Beatles songs forever and have big hit records, but they just don't match up with, even those are amazing songs. When you try to re-record, a classic, it's not always easy. So I always take my hat off to people who can do covers and kind of make them their own.
Speaking of covers, I heard Carlos Santana cover one of your tracks. What's that like to have someone of his stature and place in music history be playing your music? Was that something? A, did you know about that? And B, is that something that makes you proud, or is that expected? What's your thoughts on having people like that cover your tracks?
No, it's completely not expected. I mean, when something like that happens, Carlos was just coming off his biggest record, ever. It was called Supernatural. It sold like 24 million records. He was following up with a record called Shaman, and everyone was trying to get on that record because it had, you know, Carlos doesn't write his own songs. So every songwriter and producer and, every song had like 3 or 4 songwriters and big producers. And I'd written the song for the Clarence Greenwood recordings already, and it was already done for my next record. Um, and and Carlos really loved it, and he asked for permission to put it on his record, but we didn't know if it was actually going to make it. So went out there and recorded, and it ended up making it like the day before I found out. I think they were maybe just stalling me to cut some kind of better deal, but it made the record, and so grateful for that opportunity, because even though it was supposed to be for my record and it eventually ended up on my record without Carlos, uh, it was a great experience. I got to go to the studio with Carlos and record his guitar and do some percussions and a little bit of organ on it. And it was an interesting perspective because my stepbrother, when I was growing up, was a big Carlos Santana fan, and he was always a really giving soul. He would kind of look out, send Christmas presents. We didn't live together, but always looked out. He was 2 years older than me, and just had a big heart and a lot of empathy. And he would always remember us and everything. And one year I was like, he's always done so much, and I was a big Carlos fan, and I bought him a Carlos Santana record and sent it to him for Christmas. And unfortunately, he passed away like 5 months later, and he was very young at the time, and not to turn things too dark, but I know a lot of people deal with this, but or can identify with this, but he took his own life, and at a very young age. And when Carlos asked me to play on the record, it wasn't just, oh wow, I get this, it's going to get a lot of spotlight, but it had somewhat of a spiritual significance, and that makes sense due to Carlos's kind of dedication to the spirit and the universe and the unknown and the supernatural.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I just want you to let you know that we have people tuning in from all over the world: South Africa, Copenhagen, Wyoming, my gosh, New York, Baltimore, Maryland, Texas, Maine. To say the internet's going crazy to be on the broadcast with you would not be an overstatement. Even someone here saying that your song was the first song played at their wedding, and they invited you, but they figured you were pretty busy and you didn't have a chance to get back to them. But so suffice to say, the internet is alive and well, and wants you to know that they're behind you and grateful for your last album, Heroin and Helicopters, and of course the single that you dropped today. And I know we're gonna hear a little performance from you shortly, but I did want to represent the internet and ask a question that's come in from a couple different channels right now, and it is, how are you managing in this crazy time that we're in right now? The world wants to know.
Well, I'm just trying to take it, one moment at a time. I kind of have been subconsciously asking for a little bit break because I've been touring so hard over the last 15 years, and I had a great tour planned. I kind of culminated into this amazing tour happening from April through May, and that all got postponed and changed. And so that was kind of a bummer because I had a lot of great plans, and it was kind of a majority of what I've been working on. Some really great theaters. At Red Rocks sold out, which was sold out in 72 days before it. So some really beautiful venues. The Moore Theater in Seattle. There was some great places that I like to play. So that was a disappointment, but really I look at my main focus on this whole thing is just how other people will be.
Yeah.
I see so many of the places that I go to, some of the mom and pop restaurants. I usually don't, go to commercial or corporate anything's hotels or restaurants or anything like that. I try to stay away from that and support independently owned uh, mom and pop organizations. So a lot of the places that I go to, I really not just the places that I go to, the places that took a chance, the people that took a chance to go after their dream and not and go after their whatever they're doing, and they provide such an amazing service to us all because they're the ones that make things cool before they're cool. That's the shop that, okay, now they turned a chain into this type of thing because they realized there was so much stuff, so much support of it, and not just that, the 90+% of people that live paycheck to paycheck and don't have any savings, and I was very concerned on, how people would survive, and that's also turned into just having a lot of gratitude for the people that have actually worked and been at the restaurants doing delivery or at the grocery store checking out people who are out there working during this stressful time and also putting themselves at risk. So my focus was pretty much on others at the time. um, you know you do art, and as much as you have to, because we live in a capitalistic society, as much as you have to be aware and of your own business and your own and providing for your own family, I think innately we all go to it for a more selfish reason, which is to get uh, this amazing kind of end result of what it feels like to do something artistic and have it come together. I think where it's all like we're all, it's almost like, wow, this really happened, and how many steps it took to do that. That's really the payoff and the achievement of it. And sometimes you're like, well, I did this, and then nobody, it was like a tree falling in a forest. Nobody heard it. But I think that, time is on the artist's side. And I read a quote recently about that. It was an article in the Atlantic, and it was, I don't remember the guy that was written, but it was recently, and two writers interviewed each other, and it's an old gentleman, and he said that, pretty essentially, art can overcome all this stuff, and art is on, kind of timeless. It has the ability to be timeless. And one thing about music is if you make the right song, it can live forever, and it can affect people in a really good way. Like you said, somebody got married to the music, and that's happened so many times over the years, and I'm just grateful that it's inspired people like that. And I'm very grateful that it's, supported me and my family as well.
Well, it's incredibly inspirational to hear you talk about your work, and especially saying that art has the power of saving and art has the power of motivating us and getting us through tough times, both on the creation side of it and on the consuming side of it. So with that, I wanted to let you perform a little bit of your art. And I know we haven't rehearsed what songs we're going to play. I just know that you got a few queued up, and you're a professional, so I'll let you take it from here and play us one or two or three tracks, whatever you like, and then we'll be back with some questions from around the world. If you're just tuning in, I'm Chase. We're at creativelive.com/TV with the one and only Citizen Cope.
All right, this is the new single, Scared of Heights, featuring my guitar, Lele. Lay down, road weary traveler. Hey, now come as you are. Before your Learning to fly when you're scared of height. It's a balloon when you wake up. It's all in tune when you wake up. Learning to fly when you're scared of height. Some get put off by silence because the truth, it carries some weight. How did we gain our reliance? Some fools were just meant to play. It's a full moon when you wake up. It's all in tune when you wake up. Learning to fly when you're scared of height. It's a balloon when you look up. It's all in tune when you look up. Learning to fly when you're scared of height. Too close to the flame, get burned. A penny saved is a penny earned. So glad to have this lesson learned. Ooh, too close to the flame, get burned. A penny saved is a penny earned. Glad to have this lesson learned. It's a balloon when you wake up. It's all in tune when you wake up. Learning to fly when you're scared of height. It's a balloon when you wake up. It's all in tune when you wake up. Learning to fly when you're scared of height. Learning to fly when you're scared of height. Learning to fly. Learning to fly. Learning to fly. Learning to fly. All right.
Man. Wow. I don't know if, how the internet claps, but the internet's going crazy. Thank you. Stunning. I'm gonna stay quiet and let you play a couple more if you're willing to.
Oh yeah. All right. I found this a brand new gift, looking for somebody to play with. I found this a brand new light, something within me all my life. There's so much trouble in the world, surrounded by miracles, so much hatred undeserved. But it will not work, but still my love will be received. Better yet still, my heart is in need of release. Yet still, my love will be received. Better yet still, my heart is in need of release. Ain't about justice when it's not about what was, what is. When it's not about to share it with. I found this brand new life, something within me all of my life. There's so much trouble in the world, surrounded by miracles. So much hatred undeserved, but it will not work. But still, our love will be received. Better yet still, my heart is in need of release. Yet still, our love will be received. Better yet still, my heart is in need of release. Ain't about justice, but it's not about what was, what is. But it's not about what's left. But it's not about the next step. But it ain't about justice. But it's not about what was, what is. But it's not about what's there. But it's not about the next step. But it ain't about justice. But it's not about what was, what is. But it's not about what's there. But it's not about the next step. Oh, oh, will be received. Better yet still, my heart is in need of release. Yet still, our love will be received. Better yet still, my heart is in need of relief. Okie dokie.
Wow. Man, thank you so much. Anne Marie, Shannon, Sarah Elizabeth, Melody, Ryan, Sarah, Joy, Melissa, Justine, all clapping virtually, and grateful for you sharing your music with us here today.
All right.
As I shared at the beginning of the broadcast, I had the chance to listen to the last album, Heroin Helicopters, straight through this morning. Of course, I listened to a bunch of it before since it came out, but to be able to just play it straight through, there's just an incredible arc that that the album follows, and it seems to me just so incredibly self-aware. And I was curious if you could tell me, what role does self-awareness play for you as an artist and with your music in general?
Well, I think you go back and forth with it. You know, it's one of those things that kind of fuels your art. I think artistically, you go into something and you're so kind of in the moment when you're creating it, and then anything great that has come out of that self-awareness throughout whatever. I don't know if it's self-awareness, but being in the moment and in a meditative state and doing something that your kind of mind is shut off. And then you finish the song and your mind starts to go. It's like, well, how do I get this to people? And that's from the self-awareness early on, kind of doesn't do you, you know, that's when it goes out the window kind of thing. You're like, well, and you end up, you know, I thought about it recently. Like I've never had a problem with what I've stood up for, as far as like how I've been treated in the music business, or, you know, people that have taken advantage. And it's, you know, music business is a very, can be a very rotten business. Like, you know, historically it's stolen from the artists, and, you know, that's, you know, that's documented, well documented over time. A lot of times they try to make it seem that the artist is the one that's difficult, or, you know, a diva, or this and that. But the fact is that, you know, most managers and record executives have been complicit in basically, you know, stealing from artists. And, you know, there's a few managers that really, really are worth their weight in gold. And I think they've, grateful that they've had a real partnership with their artists, like the John Landells of the world, you know, who has Bruce Springsteen. And there's great executives that you really need record executives sometimes to help shape your career and build you up. Um, and and the system is important, but the actual system of somebody controlling an artist is the artist is usually looked at as the bad guy if he stands up for himself. So I never feel like uh, I don't regret any of the ways that I've stood up, or the fact that I've stood up for myself, whether it be with a promoter or an agent or a record company or anything related to the business side. But I've had displeasure with myself on how I did it. So over the years, that self-awareness kind of may have taken a back seat in those circumstances. So I've been really working on, or acknowledging the fact that that self-awareness has to kind of be where I'm writing that song. I'm in that present moment thing there. I can't lose that, I got to be like Michael Corleone and just keep cool.
Great reference. Yeah. We at Creative Live, we try and champion artists who have that fierce independence. We've had a number of folks who've shared the tribulations of, having to sue their own record companies. Jared Leto was on here and talked about that. And Macklemore going independent, Zoe Keating, the cellist, being independent. You've somehow been able to navigate this fierce independence with, for your art, and still be the recipient of mainstream success. So is there how have you navigated that? And is that looking outward or looking inward? There's a lot of people who are listening right now that are conflicted with that, because they want to achieve commercial success. They want to be admired and respected by their peers and on the cover of a magazine. But it seems like you are one of the few that have been able to navigate this success, this outward or overt success, and also artistic integrity. How have you managed those two things together?
Well, I think it just comes from what you're saying, that artistic integrity. It's just something that you have to put in and you have to feel good about when you put it out, and let those who it's meant to be for be the ones that champion it. And I've never had, like I said, I never had a top or radio charting song. I've had some success at some, non-commercial stations, but not even and that's kind of the lowest realm of radio. And triple A kind of non-commercial, and I never charted on this triple A chart, which is not even with Sideways, Bullet in a Target, Sun's Gonna Rise, and Let the Drummer Kick, which are all gold singles, but they never, a majority of the people never played them. And I'm grateful for those who did. But the Clarence Greenwood recordings never spent a week on the Billboard Top 200. So not one week did it sell as well as, the top 200 artists. So it took 10, 12 years for that record to go gold, which is 500,000 copies. So it was never like flash. And I always thought, well, making it would get that big splash and Grammy nominations and all this kind of stuff, but that's just not the way it worked out for me. But I know I have friends that had big radio hits, and they can't go out and play shows now. And I think if you really look at it, if you want it would be great to have both, like to have mainstream success and a long-term career. But I've been able to figure out, kind of been label proof, and kind of the normal ways that people do it. I was able to figure out a way to do it to still be able to play and provide, music for people out there. But it's not an easy road. Everybody looks at the ego thing, which, oh, I want to be on the cover of Rolling Stone. And, everyone would love to, or even, get a decent review by Rolling Stone. But it's that those kind of days are over. Those days are over where it's like, print really doesn't matter that much anymore. And they've kind of made themselves they kind of took themselves out of the ball game by not champion real artists and championing things that sell right away.
Well, thank you so much for being a guiding light to me and so many who look up to you as someone who's been able to manage that, keep their artistic integrity in place, and still provide a living for themselves and for you and your family, for example. It's so refreshing. And is it your belief that we're moving away from that mainstream, and now we're seeing this decentralization? Because here we are. I mean, we've got thousands of people tuned in from all over the world on all kinds of different platforms. No record executives. It's just you down in LA and me up in Seattle here with the internet connection. So is that more the future, or are you how do you view the future for musicians and other artists? Is it ripe, or should we be worried?
I mean, I think this kind of thing definitely is gonna kind of maybe bring the middle class back to art, where like it became like this, if you could compare it to a division of class, like the super wealthy and then the broke. And there's always a great amount of artists that kind of lived in a upper middle kind of area, not financially, but just as far as being able to sustain themselves, that you never heard of. So, yeah. And there was always the underground kind of comes up and becomes mainstream. That paradigm is still. What's interesting is I like to see how the streaming thing really plays out, because every time I hear somebody say the same thing at every single meeting, then I realize that something's not going to happen with this. And that keyword is Spotify. And every meeting you go to, oh yeah, we can get you Spotify playlists, we can get you this and that, and Spotify. And they're spending their whole revenue on Spotify, and that's because a lot of the majors own a piece of Spotify and have kind of the leverage on what Spotify needs, which is the content. And therefore you have a great amount of putting too many eggs in that one basket. So I don't know that whatever streaming it is, Apple or Amazon or whatever, they're still kind of controlled by the big players. And then you can always hear about, oh, this person came out of SoundCloud, but you didn't hear about them till they kind of joined with the major company. Even you mentioned Macklemore, like his big ascension came when he finally, went to the Warner Brothers system. He started in that independently, but once it caught some heat and they realized it was going to do something, they pushed on they pushed the button at Warner Brothers. And not to take anything away from him, because it was an amazing thing that he did. But I think there's still going to be the people that you need a campaign with, and something like this is going to become an equalizer in the playing field. But we're still being controlled by the system, I think, in a lot of ways, because they got to figure out a way to monetize it without relying on advertisement and this kind of thing, which is like kind of what I want to be able to pay an advertiser. I want to be able to pay somebody to advertise. I don't want to have to rely on an advertiser paying me. I want to be able to pay for advertising my shows or my record or whatever. I want to pay to advertise. I don't want to worry about advertiser paying me, because then it artistically, it's better to go hand to hand. It's better to have customers. It's better to have a real fan base that you can actually interact with. And I think that's starting to happen, where you kind of get a direct contact with your people.
Yeah, I think that it's well said, and to me, that's the future hope, right? This direct connection that we have with the people that appreciate our music, and I'll just let you know that Sarah and Lisa are telling people to stop what they're doing and complimenting you on music being pure soul. That's Michael coming in from YouTube. Just you got the whole world cheering you on here behind us today. I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about your process. Go back to the process of writing the album Heroin and Helicopters, which would be great if you first told us the namesake of the album. I read a story about how that name came to be, but tell us a little bit about how that name came into being, and then what was your process for creating that album?
Well, years ago when I was doing Sideways, and Carlos Santana wanted the song on his record, he came to a show I was doing at the Fillmore in San Francisco, and he came backstage and he says, "Excuse me, whatever you do, stay away from the two H's." And I was like, "What are the two H's?" And he said, "Heroin and helicopters." He says, "Don't do heroin and don't fly in helicopters." And, I guess, obviously the heroin reference, but Bill Graham and Stevie Ray Vaughan had passed away in the helicopter, and he had some close people to him not make it. And so years later, I mean, this is 15, 16 years ago, and I was thinking about what I was going to name the album, and I felt like that actually had a story to it because it was still relevant now. And it seemed like, all right, we're dealing with this crisis and this opioid epidemic, and people get on the opioids, and then those are heroin derivatives, and then they go back to using heroin, and it becomes and we've lost a lot of people. We've lost a lot of my peers in music have passed away for overdosing, and let alone we all have family members and friends who have suffered. A lot of us ourselves have, had to overcome some sort of addiction. And it wasn't just, when I thought about the album, I wasn't even thinking just about substance abuse. I was thinking about the addiction to our, cell phones, to social media, and the kind of these things that are taking us away from real human interaction. And also addiction to kind of conflict. And it's like we're so addicted right now to conflict, where we can easily type off something and say something nasty over the internet, or even, address somebody that we love about something that they don't want to hear. We might have the tendency to say it not in the most empathetic way, because a lot of times it's great to be able to tell something they might not want to hear if you're close to somebody, but it's like, how you say it. And with our political differences right now going on in the world, like I think I was in Brazil, and it's kind of like, it seems like everywhere in the world has somewhat of a similar dynamic, with one side thinking this, and then there's this uprising of this, and it's taken so much of our attention, politics, which is, to me, it's like I've always had a social awareness of what's going on, and dreams and aspirations. I've always wanted there to be a better education system, and I've felt like, we could cure certain diseases easier. But when we're operating on this low frequency right now, where we're all just arguing about this politician and that politician and why this guy's better, it doesn't we're using an immense amount of energy that we could use to cure cancer, have a great educational system, kind of concentrate on the things that we all want for our children or for humankind. And we could make these amazing leaps and bounds in humankind if we actually just address those situations instead of like pointing fingers at each other and like, oh, you're wrong, I like this guy, I like that guy, and we're dealing on a person, and it's almost become personal. So at that point, it's really not about, there's no victory in that. And so, in the helicopters part was kind of just dealing, and one thing I wanted to add about that is, back to the heroin thing, is like, we all can learn a great deal from people who think differently than us. And, there's friends of mine that, have guns and this kind of thing. I never had a gun. But there's conversations you can have. They're like, okay, well, that doesn't make him my enemy. There's people that there might be somebody who taught me how to tie their shoes, and so when I grow up, I don't sit at the table and have disagreements with them or just differ from them politically, socially, or racially, or religiously. So we can have all these differences, but the fact is I actually learned something from them in my life. And the heroin part is the helicopters part is kind of that we're in a rush to get somewhere. And we're always in a rush, and it's like, oh, okay, we're not really taking in what's going on. And, we've been taught in the society to get more and get more and get more, and you keep chasing that thing. And the reason I bring it up, because I've been guilty of it myself. And what can I do more and more and more, and not really enjoying the moment, and realizing that we are at our destination and we're already there. But, there's things that we can do to get somewhere else, but we can't be so concentrated on getting there, because then when we get there, we're not even going to enjoy it. If we can't enjoy where we are now, so it's like a bank account or something. You're like, if you can't save $10 when you're making no money, then if you get $1 million, you're gonna spend that million too. So that's where the title came from.
No, I love the depth, and you can your values are so reflected in the title, and I think that's one of the things I've always admired about you as an artist. Your values, seems like you lead with them. I was first acquainted to your music, speaking of the Moore Hotel and indie radio, by KEXP and John in the Morning and Cheryl Waters up in Seattle and KEXP and at the Moore Theater. My wife used to live in a little corner apartment there at the Moore Theater. So amazing venue, and to witness you in person and to hear you speak about your values so eloquently today. I think that's something that's why the internet's going bonkers right now, and just grateful for the time you're sharing with us today. I wanted to have one other line of question before we let you
shout out to KEXP. Big shout out to KEXP, John in the Morning, and everybody over there, Kevin, and they were like one of those stations when they started playing Bullet and Target acoustically that just, wow, I never had a situation where a radio station was playing something and then I'd go there and there's all these people there, and it really kind of, I think it was right when they started getting really, really popular, and they were very supportive of that one record, and I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, they're dear, dear friends of mine, and much respect. They've brought us so many great folks, and in that indie fashion that you've talked about. Yeah. One more line of question before, if you'd play us one more song or two after this. I want to talk about the genre, because I think a lot of people, again, the audience today is mostly creators and entrepreneurs, people who are not just inspired by your music and your art, but who are creators themselves. And a question that I hear regularly and that I like to get from people who are guests on the show is, how do you pick your lane? How do you know what you're good at? How do you develop a personal style? So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you found your style. I know you've talked at length in other interviews about all your influences, but there's something that's so pure, and you are almost genreless. It's not hip hop, it's not reggae, it's not pop, it's not folk. It's like this amazing amalgamation of all these different heritages and lineages, but you're unmistakably you, and I think that's the sign of a true artist. So how did you arrive there?
I think you got to really dig deep and woodshed. Every artist has to spend a lot of time by themselves, and it means kind of sacrificing friendships, sacrificing family, sacrificing what you would normally want to do, and up there in a cabin somewhere or in a cheap hotel somewhere in Jamaica running on the beach, doesn't really matter where you are, but allowing yourself to be like, you got to go out there and find it yourself, and really it's within you. So there's nothing that, you got to be true and authentic to what you do and who you are. And obviously you can use your influences, but how is that voice really going to speak to other people? And essentially, it's after trying for a long time, you'll know when that voice is speaking. You can be like, oh man, this isn't right. But I remember the first time, after years, and I got goosebumps writing a song. And I was like, man, that's something there, and I think when you kind of have to be authentic. I mean, we live in a society that wants to follow trends, so it's very difficult. It's very difficult to kind of do that, pull that locomotion, if you will. But you have to, people can gain commercial success. I mean, obviously there are people around me that have big multi-platinum records and all this kind of stuff, and people are like, oh, your stuff is better than theirs. And I was like, it's not about that. It's about, reaching an audience and fulfilling an audience and touching somebody on a really small level and growing that. And I think a lot of times as artists, we're scared. We kind of lose our vision as artists in trying to monetize things. And I think that, like I said earlier, it's not that the other side isn't important, because how much you love your art has to be, you have to equally represent that commercially, and just have the hustle. I mean, Basquiat went in and chased, what's his name?
Andy Warhol.
Andy Warhol down at a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's like having that kind of, go after it. It's not like, you don't want to be a pest to anyone, but if you have the talent, you owe it to your thing to somewhat, knock on a bunch of doors. And I think that, but the process of artistically kind of finding yourself has to do with woodshedding and being by yourself and sacrificing the things, because so many artists think, okay, I want to have a, wife and kids, and I want to go out on the weekends, and I want to go to this event, or I want to go to that. Like, there ain't none of that. When I started out, there wasn't no girlfriend. There was a, what's it called? A futon on the floor, and I had a great little efficiency apartment that I wrote a lot of great songs at, and spent a lot of time alone. I'd go to open mics, 3 times a week to kind of start to learn how to perform live, because that wasn't my forte. I was more like a songwriter and a producer, and it's like, so if your partner isn't supportive of it, I had a partner at the time, and then she was like, well, if you make it, you're not going to be around, and if you don't, you're going to be miserable. So So it was like we kind of split up and everything. But it was like it's not. There's not a lot of time for Matt, being around and doing stuff. I spent, luckily at the 930 Club in Washington D.C. The people were very cool with me and let me come in to see shows. So I saw a lot of shows, and I spent a lot of time. I walked around. I didn't have any transportation, but prior to that, I used to buy and sell tickets. So I always had enough money to get by, and then I stopped even doing that because I didn't even want that there, and would occasionally go and do some stuff just to cover my rent. Uh, but for the most part, it's woodshedding, and people probably don't want to say that, but you'll find yourself in that alone time.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think people like have the misconception of, oh, my life's going to be like a banker. They want to be an artist, but they want to live a 9 to 5 kind of corporate life because they feel like it's an excuse to get away from actual real work. But if you do this, it's probably a lot more time consuming than actually getting a job, and a lot more emotionally scarring and
So
emotionally difficult when you're knocking and getting failure after failure. But it's also a lot more fulfilling when you actually do um, get a minor success, and then you can eventually get to that point of, okay, well, I got myself maybe a house or a great apartment, and I can go out to a nice restaurant and take my girl out or whatever, that kind of thing. And or if it's great, you can jump on a private jet and fly to wherever you want. But I've never uh, got that type of success. But I mean, it's like there's a great level of thing you can do, but it's any art you do, it's not going to be. You're not living. You got to find somebody that's going to understand that that's what you do, and that's where your heart is, and everything else kind of has to take second fiddle. And obviously, when your children come along, that's a whole different story. But you know, when you're trying to get your thing off, I think, you know, woodshed, woodshed, woodshed.
So does that mean indirectly? Um, Here we are. We're recording this in April of 2020, and woodshedding has basically been prescribed to
Yeah.
most of the people on the planet. So is there an implicit message in what you just shared about this particular opportunity, about right now? Would you give
Yeah.
some
I
advice
mean,
on that?
I think if we're sitting here worried about what's going to happen next, then we're losing focus. This happened for a reason. Whatever powers that be, whether, if you believe in conspiracy theories or if you just feel like the universe wanted to kind of let everybody take a rest. I mean, I think it was needed. I mean, I was looking around. I go to different cities, and I've been saying for the last couple of years, this can't sustain itself. You see all the cranes, all the building, you talk to the Uber driver and ask if he's doing any better because there's all this new stuff going on. Everyone says, oh, you should have seen Nashville 7 years ago. Oh, you should have seen Louisville 5 years ago. Oh, you should have seen, Venice 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Everyone has the same story. So every city, wherever it is, all the rural, people in the rural areas have moved to the cities. So there's all this growing and all this kind of stuff. And it's just not sustainable. Like, who's going to pay for all this? Who's going to pay for these $2 million condos that are being built up, 25 feet high? And and so I'm just thinking like how, and everybody's in a rush to get more and more and more, and getting into businesses that don't necessarily provide quality and craftsmanship. And that's where we're all luckily have something that we as artists we can deliver real true craftsmanship and real true quality if we put our minds to it. With that said, yeah, I mean, I think this time right now we might not experience this ever again. It might happen, more than we expect. But part of that time, and this was meant to kind of slow people down or change their perspective. And people have been running around too much with their heads cut off, including myself. So
universe has a way of providing what we need, even when we don't think we need it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just Carl and Lisa and Sarah and Dina and Gabrielle and David and Jason and Shannon, and would love to hear another track or two if you can share with us maybe one or two more before we let you wrap up.
All right, let's sing a song that I'm. The song is called Sideways. Salty to leave me. There are no words to describe it in French or in English. As diamonds they fade, flowers they bloom, and I'm telling you that these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways. They've been knocking me out late. Ever you come around me, these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways. I keep thinking in a moment that time will take them away. These feelings won't go away. These feelings won't go away. You know it ain't easy for these salty to leave me. There are no words to describe it in French or in English. As diamonds they fade, flowers they bloom, and I'm telling you that these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways. They've been knocking me out late. Ever you come around me, these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways. I keep thinking in a moment that time will take them away. These feelings won't go away. These feelings won't go away. As diamonds they fade, and flowers they bloom, and I'm telling you, and I'm telling you, the diamonds they fade, the flowers they bloom, and I'm telling you, and I'm telling you, these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways. They've been knocking me out. away. I keep thinking in a moment that time will take them away. These feelings won't go away. These feelings won't go away.
Whoa. That was amazing. We got a lot of Emily and Palai and Gabriel, a lot of tears being shed on the internet. People saying that will never ever this is forevers here, tired of you playing that song. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So grateful. For those of you just joining, I'm Chase here with Mr. Citizen Cope. New single drop today on IG, Scared of Heights, which he played earlier, and you'll have the chance to replay this wherever you're seeing it, either here at creativelive.com/TV or Facebook or YouTube. Watch it again if you can. It's the first track he played. Last question before I let you go. Was hoping that you could give a prediction of where your music is going to take you in the next chapter of your life. Do you have a place that you want to go? Do you have I know you've articulated really clearly that the journey is the destination. I'm just wondering what there's something on the horizon for you that you're thinking about right now, or are you just content?
I think that one of the amazing things about being able to perform and make records is that you're always learning something new, and so and the adventure of that is very fulfilling. One thing I've recently come to terms with is that any of this stuff, with all the extra things that it can bring you and amazing opportunities to meet really cool people and travel cool places and record in studios and all that stuff that you never thought you could be able to do. So grateful for that. And all these things that I thought, whether it would be like the women or not whatever, most musicians, like, oh, I want to get a pretty girlfriend, so I'm gonna write a good song. But all those kind of things are kind of thrown out, and I realized that it's really about personal growth, and all that kind of stuff is secondary, because at the end of the day, it's I feel like I've come to terms with that music might be just a vehicle for personal growth, and there's a lot of things once you kind of feel like you realize that okay, this could expand to something different, maybe not just touring, or every window is going to close. I think the recording thing is going to close pretty soon, as far as like people being able to make records. So it's like, and the live thing is closed. So one thing about being an artist, it always changes, and you just got to innovate. And so trying to develop this Coolin' with Cope show, which I go to the cities and that I travel and play in, and highlight mom and pop places, businesses that I go to. I went to a great boutique hotel in Chattanooga, this distillery in Bootleg County in Virginia, a great Airbnb there, not Airbnb, bed and breakfast, sorry. Just hamburger spot, whatever's really amazing and kind of local and still has that fabric of independent spirit, and so highlighting that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of gonna build on that, just because it was a lot of fun. It kind of showed what I did outside of playing the shows.
Yeah, it's been as a consumer of that, it's been really fun to watch you pick that up and share it and highlight these individual businesses and burgers and also on your Insta lately. Just want to say thank you so much for sharing. You've been given a ton of time lately to concerts like this. I think it is innovation, as you said. When artists, when were dealt a hand, you don't know what's coming around the corner, but it's really you seem to epitomize like responding to that in the moment. It's been inspirational as hell to watch you and to contribute so much of your time to playing shows like this and others online. So I wanted to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's not something I normally would have ever thought I would be doing, but it just kind of came to the point of, it kind of started when I got interested in this Coolin' with Cope show, and I was like, oh, this is really cool, and I expanded it some interviews, and I did a bunch of free concerts, and then doing some paid ones. I'm having actually want to announce next week. This is the first place I'm going to announce it. I'm doing 3 shows, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and one's going to be just a regular show. One's going to be kind of a storytellers. On Saturday's going to be storytellers, and I'm going to do the Clarence Greenwood recordings from start to finish and tell some stories about it, take some questions. And the shows are always really long, but, you can rewatch them again. And the third one is going to be kind of deep cuts, stuff that I don't normally play at shows or that aren't necessarily in the popular kind of what people, but I found that like people love all the people that are invested in my music kind of like all the stuff. So I always hear songs like, shouted out, and I end up playing them and playing more, and it never can be enough. At the end of the 2.5-hour show, somebody says, well, why didn't you play the newspaper? Why didn't it's like, oh God, well, you can't play all of it. But I kind of wanted to do one of those deep cuts ones. And it's going to be the first time the Clarence Greenwood recordings is performed acoustically. So it's going to be a special kind of, these 3 shows will be amazing. And I think I'm going to announce the shows tomorrow. So look on the IG or the website or the Facebook with information on how to get tickets to that. And we're also working with some charities involved in it. So it's all good.
Amazing. Well, we'll make sure to amplify that when you make the announcement of where we can see it. Thank you for sharing something that hasn't been shared anywhere else with us here today. It means the world to us. And Catherine and Villa Maroc and Shannon and Gabriel and Mark and myself and the entire Creative Live community, the creator community around the world. So grateful for you sharing your insight and wisdom and of course your art with us today. Very, very grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you, Jakes. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you giving, artists a voice and for your listeners to be able to kind of get some real insight on stuff, because usually an interview is not really all inclusive as far as like an interview is just the bullet points. And, with this forum, you can actually get deep into what an artist and the creative process is. And I think every artist out there wants to kind of get that knowledge, and I kind of, it reaffirms what we do watching something like this.
Appreciate it. Well, next time you're in Seattle, you and I and Kevin and John and Cheryl can get together down at KXP, because I'm sure you'll be strolling through there next time you can come to Seattle.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. Really, really appreciate it. If you want to serenade us off into the sunset, we can close out at the end of the song, or if you're all fed up, we can let you go. Your call, man.
I'll give you another one.
If you don't want to, man, I'm just looking at 1,000 comments coming in here.
Oh, what do they say? They want to hear.
They're just begging for one more.
What song they want to hear?
Oh, this would be a good one. Okay, there's about a 5-second delay between when I say it and when it hits the internet. So you just heard Citizen Cope ask you what you want to hear, and oh god, here comes the comment. We're gonna count it down 10 seconds, and then I'm gonna let you know what comes in here, because now, okay, Shannon and Villa and Barbara, and well, we got about 30 requests for Let the Drummer Kick. We got Bullet coming in here. Bullet in a target. Bullet in a target. Bullet. Bullet. One more. Newspaper. All the. I mean, now I'm snowed under now.
Newspaper's a deep cut. All right, I'm gonna get. Because drummer is not. I didn't write that on acoustic guitar. I kind of wrote that on my keyboard and drum machine. But I play Bullet in a target.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll just sign off at the end of this and have you have a great day.
Say, Mr. Dalai Lama's little sister shooting hair on the mountain. Amputees and free time, the honest. The church wasn't honest. The state put the youth in a harness, creating hostility among us. The teacher said no college. Still kid gotta get a check with a couple commas. People wanna bomb us. Poor people gotta scatter and run from us. You could blame it on Tucson, Apollo, or Adonis. What you done here is put yourself between a bullet and a target. And it won't be long before putting yourself away. What you done here is put yourself between a bullet and a target. And it won't be long before putting yourself away. Yeah. Between a bullet and a target. Between a bullet and a target. I've been knowing her for years. I've been seeing her for years. She got a dark, dark wavy hair with a forehead like she just don't care. She got a skirt with a halter top. She got a daddy never gave her. She drank a beer with a proper shot. She got knocked up in a pickup truck. But she got engaged when she was 19 to this dude who was acting insane. Had a 45 that he always claimed. Said one too many days. Now we ducked and she ran away. Never to be heard from, never to be seen. I checked the cover of a magazine. And now I'm wondering how, just wondering what you done here. Put yourself between a bullet and a target, and it won't be long before pulling yourself away. What you done here is put yourself between a bullet and a target, and it won't be long before pulling yourself away. Yeah, yeah. Between a bullet and a target. 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 Between a bullet and a bullet and a bullet.